little bit more here about plant growth, anatomy, and physiology. What we're focusing on here is growth. We'll talk about primary growth and then talk about secondary growth. A few terminology bits here to straighten out before we talk about primary growth. And that is the term meristem. We in animals would call these stem cells, and what stem cells are in animals is that they're undifferentiated cells. I mean, they haven't been assigned any sort of task that divide and then they turn into something. Like stem cells can differentiate into muscle cells or nerve cells. In plants, we call them meristems. So meristematic cells or meristems are undifferentiated cells that retain the ability to produce new cells. You have apical meristems. Those are at the tip of the root and the shoot. They extend the plant body outwards in the process of primary growth. So the apical meristem those are the meristematic cells at the tips of the root and the shoot. And what you have in primary growth is you have these meristem cells, and they give rise to three distinct primary cells, which give rise to three types of tissue. Okay. So we'll kind of say that again. You have meristem cells that give rise to three distinct primary cells, which give rise to three types of tissues. And we're going to go through these three types one by one. And there's a kind of a big graphic to follow, which I wish was on every, like that lists all three, but we'll see that at the end. So we start with meristem. We have meristem produces primary cells called protoderm, which gives rise to dermal tissue, a single layer of cells, and it protects the plant. So this is the skin of the plant, and it protects the plant body. It secretes a waxy cuticle to keep the plant from desiccating. And you also have embedded in this dermal tissue those stomata and those guard cells. The second type of tissue system is you have meristem. The primary cell it produces is procambium, which then turns into vascular tissue, the transport system, the xylem and the phloem. This is, as discussed earlier, this is the transport system for the plant, which carries water, nutrients, the products of photosynthesis to and from the plant, the xylem and the phloem. And then you have the meristem can differentiate into ground meristem cells, which then forms the ground tissue system, which is the major bulk of the plant body, which is used for like storage and photosynthesis. So if it's not vascular tissue and it's not the skin, you know, that single layer, the skin of the cell, the dermal tissue, everything else is the ground tissue system, the bulk of the plant. So you have three types of ground tissue. You have parenchyma, collenchyma, and sclerenchyma. Now we're going to look at this stuff in lab, but we'll just go over them here. So parenchyma cells, this is the primary site of photosynthesis and as far as storage, which is living at maturity. They're thin primary cell walls, most abundant and most versatile. So most of your ground tissue system is made up of these parenchyma cells. Collenchyma cells, they are the mainly for support in herbaceous plants, provide structural support. They're abundant in elongating stems and petioles, and these are also living at maturity. So you see like the celery stalk there. Those are the celery stalk, the strings in celery, that is made up of collenchyma cells. It's kind of fibrous, and it produces the bulk, the support, I should say. Sclerenchyma cells are specialized support cells, and they kind of thicken up the cell wall in addition to that thin primary cell wall. And it's contains lignin, making it unable to expand, and it is dead at maturity. So a good example of sclerenchyma cells is like the grit in pears, and I think we still do that in lab, where you know pears have a kind of a gritty texture to them. That is because of these sclerids, these sclerenchyma cells. So again, like in review, so you have meristem. It gives rise to 3 distinct primary cells, each giving rise to 3 types of tissue. So I didn't put meristem with you. So you have protoderm, which gives rise to dermal tissue, procambium, which gives rise to vascular tissue, and ground meristem, which gives rise to the ground tissue system. Now, secondary growth, whereas primary growth to elongate the plant, secondary growth is the type of growth where you then add width to the roots and the shoots rather than length. So you have apical meristem growth in primary growth, but now the meristems that you have that are responsible for the thickening or increasing the width are called lateral meristems. And there is a few terms here, but I forgot to mention. In secondary growth, your function is to increase the amount of tissue, conducting tissue, and provide structural support. Like, you see like rings of a tree. A tree not only grows tall, but it also grows in width. The tree keeps adding rings, getting fatter. So lateral meristem, also called secondary meristems or cambium. I know there's different terms for the same thing. So lateral meristems, also called secondary meristems or cambium, are made up of thin layers of meristematic cells that form cylinders running the length of the root or the stem. So let us proceed, because again, there's all kinds of terms here that are probably new to you. So that we have 2 types of lateral meristem, which we also call cambium. There's cork cambium and vascular cambium. Okay, there you go. You have 2 types of lateral meristem, which we also call cambium. Cork cambium and vascular cambium. Vascular cambium produces secondary xylem to the inside and secondary phloem to the outside, which then becomes part of the bark. The inside is secondary xylem, which is part of the wood, and to the outside, so you have a lateral, so I don't have a pointer here, and I don't think this is going to show. I hope it does, but so here's your cork cambium, right? And here's your vascular cambium. Your vascular cambium is going to produce xylem, secondary xylem on the inside, and secondary phloem on the outside. Now, as far as your cork cambium, and that's in purple, that's going to produce cork cells to the outside and then pheloderm to the inside. And again, this is a vocab lesson here. Cork cambium, cork cells, pheloderm make up the periderm. The periderm protects the woody stem as it increases in girth and is part of the bark. So you see on the left-hand side of the diagram, you see all that's included in the bark. What's included in the bark? You have the cork cambium, and the pheloderm, which we also call periderm, and the secondary phloem. Wood consists of the vascular cambium and the secondary xylem. And this is just because this is such a great graphic that you really should know, I just blew this up and made it bigger for you to see. As far as the vascular cambium, again, this is secondary growth to increase the width of the roots and the shoots. You're laying down more support as well as more conductive tissue. And you have vascular cambium, secondary xylem to the inside, secondary phloem to the outside. You have cork cambium with pheloderm to the inside, cork to the outside, collectively known as periderm. And when you throw in the secondary phloem, that is where you have bark. Now we're going to have a lab on this too. So that is it in a nutshell. Plant growth. Okay, that's it for now. Take care, guys.